Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing this morning? Hope you're all doing well. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I'm super excited to be hosting my first stream on Behance. I hope you're all doing well. You just watched Marissa, also known as ExoPixel, kick off today's daily challenge, which is designing a messenger app, and I'm going to be kind of bouncing off of that and designing one as well. So you're stuck with me for the next hour. Paul Tranny, who usually hosts this, is taking a little bit of a break. That guy works hard. And hey, Aaron, Anais, look at all these people. Eric, Rufus, Adobe Live, how's it going? Francisco, oh, Paco, hey, how's it going? The guy behind the magic over at Adobe Live. Wrong dude. Aw. Sorry, Aaron, disappointed you. But yeah, we're going to be diving into today's daily challenge. We're going to be designing a messenger app using Adobe XD. And this is really meant for those who are kind of just getting started with Adobe XD. Maybe even if you've been using it for a little bit longer than just getting started, but I think you'll pick up on some tips and tricks. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to leave them in the Behance chat. We are mostly on Behance. I know some of you are on YouTube right now, but if you head over to behance.net/live, we'll be chatting in there. There's a bunch of you in there leaving questions, comments, all that good stuff. And we're gonna get started. So let me hop over to my desktop. Actually, before I do that, let's go over the schedule, because we have nothing today. We just have Marissa before me, and then we have me. Then you guys have the rest of the day off to design this app. But tomorrow, we have something really interesting. We have a whole day of live hand lettering. So we have 4 different sessions being hosted, and it's gonna be really exciting because I haven't seen, hand lettering is kind of one of those pastimes that we need more of, right? So being able to see some of that being hosted live with some professionals tomorrow is gonna be really interesting and really fun. So I'm excited for that. Hopefully you'll all join from 9 in the morning all the way to 3 in the afternoon. I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be watching. It's gonna be super fun. Ryan Hamrick. Hey Blanca. Hey Cindy. Hey everyone. So I'm gonna hop over to my desktop. We have a lot to cover today, and hopefully my audio's well. It's my first stream, so you never know what'll happen. There's always technical difficulties. So like I mentioned, we're kind of bouncing off the daily challenge, which today is to design a messenger app. And one of the cool things about the XD daily challenge is we have a Slack channel. You can just jump in there. There's a ton of people chatting all day, looking for feedback, sharing their designs, just having a good time. So you can jump in there right from this link. And if you go to xd.adobelanding.com/daily-challenge, you can join and participate, which is really cool. And so you get your challenge every single morning, and you'll see them down here. So today we're designing a messenger app, and there is an XD file you can download and start with if you're just getting started. It has some nice wireframes. You can, just throw some images in there. Has some nice color schemes and everything. It's really nice. And then there's the video. So if you just missed Marissa's video just before me, you can watch that and get some tips and tricks, or you can just continue watching mine and get even more tips, or both, whatever. And if you use the hashtag XD Daily Challenge, we will see those on Twitter. We're going to be sharing them. It's a good time. It's a fun little challenge. It kind of gets you going, because a lot of times you need some inspiration. You need a challenge to really push you forward to start designing every day. I know I do. And I've been participating in some of these challenges. I haven't been posting them publicly. Some of them I have, but it just kind of gets me going every morning, which is fun. And where's everyone from, by the way? Armenia, hey, I'm streaming from Los Angeles right now, boiling hot Los Angeles, and for some reason I'm wearing a sweater and drinking a tea, so that doesn't make any sense. But let me know where you're from. I love seeing people from all over the world. It's really cool. So one thing I love to start with when I'm kind of thinking about, we have someone from Missouri, Germany, Ohio. Eric needs more Howard Pinsky in his life. I love this. Virginia, Chicago. So one thing I love doing when I'm kind of thinking about challenges or thinking about designs is really looking for inspiration. So today the Messenger app is going to be kind of inspired by Facebook Messenger, but one thing I love doing is just hopping on Behance and just looking at all the amazing designs. So if you go to this Discover page, and then on the right here, you see a UI and UX section. We have someone from India, Bangladesh, North Idaho, China. This is cool. And then if you search, let's say, Messenger, it'll search Messenger-based apps within UI and UX. And there's a ton. You can just scroll for days. And I just love browsing through this stuff and getting some good ideas for this Messenger app. So this one here, it's the Karma Messenger app. And it has some really nice elements in it. It's very clean. It has a very simple login page. It's got some nice interactions, nice colors. And one thing I love on Behance is how in-depth they get with some of these. Like this WhatsApp Messenger. Like they start from the beginning, the sketches, and they go all the way down to the color schemes, the different logos they were working with. Someone from England. Hey, England. But one thing I really liked about this one are these little borders here. And I'm going to show you a little bit later how you can do something like this. In the last update, not the one that just came out, the one before that, we introduced dashed borders. And you can kind of do something very similar to this within Adobe XD. So inspiration is huge. And some people are kind of scared to look for existing designs, but I say go for it. You know, look at what works and then don't. If you're doing it for personal use, you can copy it as much as you want. But if you're doing it for commercial use, get inspiration from many different apps, put them all together, and then create something of your own. That's kind of what we're going to be doing today. This is another one I really liked. I love this design here for the sign up and login page. And if you watched last week, Paul Tranny with, I forgot his name, Gradients. I forgot his first name. It'll come to me. He used a lot of gradients, and he used this really nice wavy design at the beginning, which is nice. So we're going to kind of do something similar. So yeah, definitely look through some Behance stuff and come up with some designs. So we're going to hop over to Adobe XD. I lost my chat here. Whoop. There you are. Peru, Brazil. He's the Grady man. Kyle Grady. I knew it was Grady. Forgot his first name. He's going to kill me. So here we are in Adobe XD. I have a document set up, and on the left here we have some Facebook inspiration that we're going to be bouncing off of a little bit, but we're also going to be bouncing off some inspiration that we just saw on Behance. So we have, Messenger apps are fairly basic. We have your messages, your read and unread messages. You have the actual message view. So you have your conversation with whoever you're talking with, and you have your contact list. And in some cases, they're sorted by favorites, they're sorted by birthdays and that sort of thing. And what I try to do before I tackle any designs after inspiration is I really break down what my different screens are going to look like. And this can be done in simple text. It could be done in sketches, whatever works best for you. I found that just jotting down what every single screen is going to contain helps me a lot when I'm actually diving in and tackling these things. Hey Ash, welcome. So we're going to be tackling 3 main screens in this episode. Hopefully we'll have time for a little bit more, but we'll see. The home screen, we're going to have our logo. We're going to have a login box, login button, a forgot password link, and then possibly a forgot password screen if we have a little bit of time. And one thing I would love from all of you in the chat is a name for this app. I'm probably not going to name it right away. I'm going to design some sort of a logo, some simple logo, but not sure if we need a name right away, but I would love to hear some creative chat messenger style names in the chat, and maybe I'll throw it in there at some point. Now for the messages and contacts screen, I'm going to have it split into 2. You can slide back and forth between the 2. We need to show unread messages, the message info, which contains the name of the sender, a preview of the message, and possibly a date. We're going to have a sorted contact list with search icon, which will reveal a search bar, which we're going to use a little bit of an overlay, which is going to be kind of fun. It's going to zoom out from the left or the right, and a new message icon. And then the message view, where all the messages are, we're going to have icons on the top. We're going to have the ability to phone or video, name a friend, name of a friend, or the friend, messages between the 2 party, photos, bottom bar, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot that we're going to cover in this live stream. We have already have some name suggestions. Chatter, chat up. They're getting clever. I want to get really clever. Give me something that doesn't exist yet and that's like super hola. That's interesting. Okay, so here we started with a single artboard. And this is an iPhone 6, 7, 8 artboard. And I did this because I do have over here, I have an iPhone 8 which at the end I'm going to show you how we can actually hook it up to our computer and preview our designs live, which is nice. I love that feature. So to get started, we're going to start with our home screen. And again, if I go back to my inspiration, I kind of want to do something similar to this. We're not going to have a sign-up flow, but we are going to have some sort of a login experience. So what we're going to do, we're going to head over to the left, we're going to grab our rectangle tool, and we're going to simply drag out a rectangle across our document just like this. Beautiful. I'm going to turn the border off because I'm probably not going to need a border, and I'm going to start by filling it with just a simple color right now. We're going to get into the gradients in a second. We're going to have a very subtle gradient. But what I want to do is manipulate this a little bit. So I'm going to double click. So what we can do, we can just drag the sides and the bottom to manipulate it like that. But if we double click on the line on the border and then double click again to add a point, we can add a nice curved point on this rectangle. And then these lines on the side, we can actually turn into a nice little wave. Look at that. And if we click off of it, we have this beautiful wave across the top of our screen. And it kind of resembles this Sono design a little bit. It's not bad. Now at this point, I'm probably okay with it, and I'm going to add a gradient. So under the fill section, if we at the top, we can change from solid color to either linear gradient or radial gradient. In this case, I'm going to probably want a linear gradient. And on the top, I'm going to have a nice light blue. Or I guess that would be the bottom, wouldn't it? I'm going to switch that around. Go to the top. There we go. A nice light blue like that. And then the bottom, slightly darker. We don't want to go too crazy, because if we go too crazy, then it looks a little bit too off. So we want a very subtle gradient. I've always said that 2018 is the year of the gradients, but they have to be nice gradients. They have to be subtle gradients, very bright and vibrant. But if you do something like this, it doesn't work. So very subtle. And that's looking pretty good. I kind of like that. The top might be a little bit too light, but I'm not hating it, so it's nice. Now, once this gradient is complete, I want to save it so you can use it later on, because I'm probably going to use it again throughout my document. So down at the bottom here, we have our assets panel. And if I have the rectangle selected and I press the color, the plus button, it actually adds the gradient directly to my assets. And I can rename this by double clicking on it. Main blue gradient. Beautiful. Why are gradients so popular this year? I don't know. That's a good question. I've noticed that definitely in the last year or so, they've popped up and they've just been everywhere. And in some cases, they're a little bit too much, but for the most part, they're not bad. Now, for this top design, I want to duplicate this one more time. So I'm going to press Command or Control D to duplicate it, and we now have two of them. And I'm going to bring this one to the back, and I'm just going to simply manipulate the wave just a little bit. So I'm going to double click on it and just manipulate it just a little bit like that, and then decrease the opacity. So if I bring it back up, whoops, if I bring it back up here, we have a nice little wave behind our initial wave, and we can continue changing it just like this. Just a very subtle wave. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on the login screen, so we want to get to all the other stuff. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to actually put a box for the emails, the password, and the sign-in button. So, grabbing our text tool, we're going to type the word email. Whoops, I have my symbol font selected. We're actually going to be using, we're going to go very simple. We're going to be using the San Francisco Pro Display font, which is Apple's font. So for iOS, if we're designing this for iOS, this will be perfect. Size, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Hopefully you can all see. Let me zoom in. If you hold down Command or Control and then use your scroll mouse or your scroll wheel, it goes nice and smooth. So, email, beautiful, regular. Let's see what light looks like. Okay, that's not bad. And it's a little bit squished together, so I'm going to go over here and just space out the characters just a little bit. Let's say, nope, 10's too little. Let's go 25. Probably still too little. 50. All right, there we go. 50 looks pretty good. Now I want to make sure that everything's lined up and using grid. So what I can do is click on my artboard, and over here to the right, I can turn on my grid. And now I have the option of having, 4 columns or 5 columns or whatever it might be. And Ash has a good point, actually, in the chat. Gradients were difficult to print, and that's absolutely true. It's also very difficult to create a GIF, a nice GIF of a gradient. I hate creating GIFs with gradients. So for my grid, I'm going to use let's say a 20 pixel border on the right and the left, and maybe let's go 30. And make sure everything lines up to that. That might be a little bit too much, though. Yeah, it's way too far in. So let's line it up to here. And we'll revisit the grid in a little bit. Boop. All right, so we got email. And right below it, we're going to duplicate it. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and drag it down. And just put in a fake email. johndoe@gmail.com. This one's going to be a little bit less opacity, because that's going to be the placeholder text, essentially. All right. Put it right about here. And then underneath that, we're going to add a simple line. There we go. And decrease the opacity. Now, what I'm going to do is, because I'm kind of liking the color, the gray text for this, I'm going to add that to my assets panel as well. So if I go over here, under color, I'm going to press the color button and just name this text. And I can also add character styles as well. So if I'm liking the San Francisco Pro display at 18 points, I'm going to add that to my character styles, just so on other artboards we can revisit that. We don't have to redo that all over again. All right, I'm going to duplicate this, and this will be for our password. Now, instead of a plain text placeholder, which we don't want, we're actually going to be using a repeat grid. So I'm going to grab my circle tool, draw out a little tiny circle right about here. I'm going to turn the fill. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use the same color. So I'm going to go to my assets, double click on my text color. Beautiful. Turn the border off. Make it a tiny bit smaller. And to create a repeat grid, and I'll be going a little bit more into repeat grids in a minute, I'm going to press Command or Control R, or you can press the repeat grid button over to the right. And then I can just drag out my password just like this. And then in between each one, I can drag this inwards to make them a little bit squishier. There we go. Beautiful. All right. Move these up a little bit and center it. That looks good. Now I want to make sure I'm naming my layers, because I'm the type of person who usually forgets to name layers sometimes. So in this case, the texts are already named, so that's good. But this one is not, so this will be password. And I would encourage you to name your layers, especially if you're working with very large projects. It can get cumbersome if you don't name your layers. All right, now to finish off this login screen, we're going to add a button right below. This will be our sign-in button. Now, because we have our color saved, we can just double click on it and we have a gradient. Now, looking at this, I'm not sure I like the gradient on this button. It's a little bit too much. So I'm going to click on the fill and then just change it to a solid color. And I might actually sample this color down at the bottom. That looks pretty good right there. And then to finish this off, we're going to type sign in. Whoops. There we go. And we obviously don't want gray for this sign in button. I'm going to make it nice and white and center it. Now, one thing you can do is if it's over to the left and you just want to center it in the middle of the document, over here to the far top right, there's this justify or align option. You can press align center and it'll align it to the center of your entire artboard, which is great. And then one more thing before we move on, we're going to type in, whoops, I can't see it. Forgot password, question mark. We're going to make this nice and light and probably decrease this a little bit. And once again, center it to our document and place it right about there. Great. So we have a basic login screen. We haven't tackled the logo just yet, but we will get there. I want to jump into the messages and contacts section, which is really the beef of all this messages or this app. Let's see, password circles should not be very highlighted. Yeah, you're probably right. They probably should be, You're absolutely right. They probably should kind of match this darkened or this John Doe so people know that it's a, you know, a placeholder field. So if I just grab this repeat grid, drop it down to 37%, which is what the other one is. Oh, and I have a typo. Thank you, Anel. There we go. Spelling's hard. Which, by the way, fun fact, in the next, I believe one of our product managers confirmed that in the next update, we're gonna have a spell checker to Adobe XD, which is fancy, which is obviously I can use right now. So we're going to add one more artboard. We're gonna press on the artboard button, and over here to the right, we have all these different templates that we can use. So whether we're designing for an Apple phone, a Google phone, Microsoft Web, whatever. And in this case, it's gonna be iPhone 6, 7, and 8. And there we go, we have a new artboard. So now on this artboard, we're gonna be tackling a few things. So we're gonna be tackling read and unread messages, message info, sorted list, contact list, and that sort of thing. Now, there's a few things I want to grab first. So one thing that helps a lot are templates. And if you go up to the file menu and you go down to get UI kits and then Apple iOS, let me hop over to, here it is. It'll basically take you to this resource page. And there's a ton of different UI kits for Apple iOS design, material design, Microsoft design, that sort of thing. And it basically, let me show you what it looks like. It looks like this. There's a lot going on in these UI kits, and this is the UI kit for the iPhone 8. So if I wanted, let me see if I can find it. They're up here. If I wanted a status bar at the top, I can just hop into here, grab this status bar, hop back over to my document, and paste it. And I now have a status bar, an iOS, or I guess an iPhone 8 status bar right at the top of my document, which is great, which helps a lot. So it cuts down a lot of steps that I'm going to be doing. Things I shouldn't really have to focus on, especially if it's provided to me by a UI kit. So let's start from the top to the bottom. I'm gonna start with a very simple hamburger icon. I'm gonna hide this for now, but I definitely will know it's there. I'm just gonna hide it. I'm gonna have a little hamburger icon here, so I'm gonna grab my line tool. I'm gonna draw out a line. And before I go any further, just to make sure everything's lined up, I wanna turn my grid back on. And I can also do that with Command, Shift, and then the little apostrophe, and that'll turn it on or off. I believe it's very similar to Photoshop, if not identical. Now for this screen, because there's a lot of information on this screen, I'm gonna decrease the gutter size to 20. The margins on the side. There we go. So now everything's, and you'll notice it snaps to the side, which is fun. Now for this hamburger icon, I'm gonna increase the size, let's say to 2 maybe? And then I want a butt end. So if you zoom in really close, you can see it's nice and rounded, which is fun. And then I'm gonna duplicate this twice. Woo. Where are you going? There we go. Beautiful. That's a great looking hamburger icon. I'm gonna leave it right about there. Now in the center, I wanna put the word messages. I'm gonna use my text color. And for this one, it's probably a little bit too light. I'm gonna, let's say, what does a semi-bold look like? That's not bad. Make sure to center it in the center of my document. Make sure it lines up with the hamburger icon. You can see these guides pop up as I'm moving this around. So this will line it up, line the center of messages up with the top of the hamburger icon. And if I pull it a little bit down, there we go, that looks great. Now, a search icon, I'll get to that. I'm gonna get to that in a second because I wanna show you something really interesting, that if you're making a lot of icons and you don't want to make a lot of icons, there's a way to get icons through the Creative Cloud Marketplace. I'm gonna show you that in a minute. But we wanna get to the conversation, so I'm gonna just grab this, name this one Conversations. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. Hey Tim, good morning. How are you? And this one I'm gonna place right around here. And this is gonna be the highlight icon, highlight item. So the first view is gonna be Conversations. So I'm gonna make this, actually, you know what? I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna add this blue. There we go. And this will be my highlight blue. Well, I can't spell today. Beautiful. And double click, and we have Conversations. And then over here, this will be our contacts. And this I do not want highlighted, so I'm going to make that our text color and then drop it down just a little bit. All right. Beautiful. Now, to add one more highlight to this, I'm going to add a slight line underneath it. So if I drag a line right from, let's go a little bit further out, all the way to the end. I want to make it the same blue, so I'm going to double click on that. And let's increase this to maybe 2 pixels. That looks nice. That way we really know that we're on the conversation screen. Okay. Now that we've tackled kind of the top section, we want to start focusing on the bulk of this Messenger app, and that's the contacts. So I'm actually going to split this into 2 sections. I know every single app in existence these days has stories. So we're going to add a little bit of, it's going to be kind of like a story view / an online view. So I'm going to turn on my grid again. Dorina says, I've downloaded it, but I guess it won't open since I'm Windows. It should open. Any XD file should open on Windows. Make sure you are up to date. So check your Creative Cloud app, but it definitely should open. Hey Greg, how are you? Greetings from Toronto. I love Toronto. One of my favorite places in the world. All right, so I'm gonna type online. You know what, let's make this caps. Online. And this is gonna be much smaller. And one trick, there's a little handle right at the bottom of the text. You can just drag this inwards, just like that. Make sure to line it up with my grid. And I'm gonna make this, let's say light. That looks okay. All right, turn my grid off. Now, so we're gonna start with some happy people. With my circle tool, I'm gonna just draw out our first little happy person. We probably don't need a border, but I'm gonna turn the fill to just gray, just so I can see it against the white background. And then right below it, I'm gonna add this happy person's name. For now, I'm gonna name this person Bob, and I'm gonna make sure to center it. So that way it lines up perfectly. There we go. Bob is online. Now we wanna make sure to repeat this across our document. So I'm gonna select both of these, press Command or Control R to add a repeat grid, and just drag it all the way across our document. It's okay if it goes off the side of the screen. That way, it kind of gives the viewer, it kind of tells them that they can slide across. So all these Bobs are now online. And what I want to do is I want to fill this with happy faces. So you may have seen Marissa in the last episode talk about Diverse UI, which is a great service, diverseui.com. You can basically download all of these happy headshots and you can use them in your projects. So going back to XD and opening up Finder, I have a ton of different headshots. I'm just gonna select a bunch of them. And all I can do is drag one of them onto my repeat grid. And it just populates all of them, which is fantastic. And the same works for text. So if you have a text file containing a bunch of names, you can do the same as well. But for now, just for the fun of it, we're gonna name them all Bob. All right, so now that the story section is done, we're going to create the actual messages below. So the same thing, we're gonna create a circle right about here. Beautiful. Fill is gonna be set to gray. And this one we're actually we're gonna do something a little bit different. But we'll get to that in a second. So there's gonna be two repeat grids. There's gonna be the red, or the unread, and then the red at the bottom. So we're gonna have a circle there. We're gonna make these a little bit bigger. We're gonna type Bob's name. Now this one, instead of being centered, it's going to be left justified. And because it's unread, let's make it now a little bit more bold. There we go. And we're gonna increase the size just a touch. There we go. And then below that, we're gonna add a message. Hey, I'm Bob. How are you, Bob? Everyone's named Bob in this Messenger app. So that's what we're gonna roll with. So Bob sent a message to Bob. And then maybe on the right-hand side, I'm just gonna grab this and drag it over. Let's see my grid. Oh, perfect. I'm gonna use this for the date. So I'm gonna right justify this. And what's the date today? August 27th. Beautiful. And this one definitely doesn't have to be nice and bold. So I'm gonna drop this down to, let's say, light, and decrease the size a little bit. Now what I'm doing here is I'm lining up my date with the name at the top. That way, if the actual message is a little bit long, it won't hit the date at the side. So now we got to turn it into a repeat grid. Now before I do that, let me actually show you what a lot of people run into. So if I were to turn this into a repeat grid, drag this down, and then go into here and actually start typing a lot longer, and then click out of the repeat grid, it sometimes cuts it off. So what I want to make sure to do is go back. Instead of turning into point text, turn it into area text, and then just drag this all the way across to where I want. There we go. And then let's say make it 2 lines. And now we can turn this whole thing into a repeat grid and drag it down. And then just like before, we can adjust this to our liking. Beautiful. So now one thing I kind of want to do is revisiting, I think it was the WhatsApp. The WhatsApp inspiration. I want too many bobs. Yeah, I know, there's a lot of bobs. I want to add some sort of a border around this. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to decrease this a little bit. And you're noticing all the instances in this repeat grid are decreasing as well, right? I'm going to decrease that. I'm going to duplicate it. And this one in the back, or I guess this one in the front, is going to be a little bit larger. And if I drag this one, or sorry, the one in the back, there we go. Drag that, make it a little bit bigger. So the one in the back is a little bit bigger. I'm going to turn off the fill and turn on a border. So now we have a cool border going around our circle. But in this case, we don't necessarily want a solid border. We want a dashed border. So I can add, let's say, a dash border of 40, and then a gap. We don't want 40, let's say 10. Now we have this cool little border effect around the back, and if we can, let's say, decrease this to 15, we now have a few more. Gap down to 5, you get the idea. So that if you want like a cool online status, and then what you can do is change the color. You could change the color of the border here, but because we have our highlight color saved in our assets panel, I can right click on the highlight blue and then apply it as a border. And then we now have a cool little indicator telling me that that person is online. So now we have at the top, we have our red messages, but our unread messages, but we don't have our red messages. So we're gonna just take this repeat grid and duplicate it down here, right about there. Now in this case, we don't want these borders anymore. So I'm gonna double click on that guy, delete it. And these are going to be, let's say medium. No, a little bit less. Regular. There we go. Whoop. So these are our red messages. These are our unread messages. Oh, sorry, I keep getting that wrong. These are our unread messages. These are our red messages. And here we can just drag this all the way down. And now we have a nice amount. So we kind of tackled this screen. One thing we didn't do is add another icon at the top. I kind of want to show you this little trick. If you go to your Creative Cloud application, go to Assets, and then Market, you can actually type in, let's say, icons. And you'll be able to browse icons that are available for you to use. And there's a really great set. It might take me a while to find it, but if I open up my Creative Cloud libraries, I have this icon set here that I downloaded from the marketplace. So what I'm able to do is just drag it right onto my pasteboard. And I have all these icons now at my disposal. Now, by default, it drags in as linked. So what you can do is right-click on it and unlink the graphic. And that will basically give you access to all of these icons to use in your project. So let's find a search icon very quickly. There it is. There's a search icon. I can double-click, copy that, and then go over here and paste it. Make it a little bit smaller, show my grid, and put it over to the right. Beautiful. Now, because it is a vector icon, I can change the color easily by double clicking on my color. And there we go. I can also take this icon and add it to my assets and rename it Search. And one thing that we added in the recent update is the ability to rearrange your assets. So if you want the search bar, or if you want the status bar above the search, you can just drag it and drop it. If I want my gradient at the top, I can do that as well. Great. So now that we're going to move on to our contact list, I'm going to actually copy this artboard. So I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and drag this over to the right. Now, because my contact list is going to be the highlight icon or the highlight section, I'm going to double click on my blue, increase this, drag this over, and then grab this one and decrease the opacity like that. There we go. Now for this section, we don't need our story/online view, but we definitely do need our bobs. We don't need, and you're noticing as I'm selecting these icons or these items and deleting them, they also update in the repeat grid as well. So in this case, I'm going to add a last name. And for this, when you're updating text in a repeat grid, you can update text individually, which is great. Last online yesterday. So Bob was online yesterday. And I'm actually going to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break up this grid, delete all of these, and just turn this one into a repeat grid. There we go. Now we have our contact list. And I'm just noticing we don't have pictures for these people. All these bobs don't have pictures. So I'm going to go back to my Finder, grab a bunch of images, and drag them in. There we go. Now let me deselect these two. And you're noticing they just update and populate automatically, which is great. And I can do the same for these bobs over here. Beautiful. So now we have a messages view with unread and read messages, and we have our contact list. We now need to create an actual messages view, which is where all the messages are going to be. So in this case, I'm going to duplicate this artboard one more time, but there's going to be a lot that we're going to change here. So I'm going to delete this repeat grid. At the top here, I'm going to actually change this to, let's say, Bob's name. We'll make sure to center it. And I may actually want an online indicator. So in this case, I'm going to grab my circle tool, drag a very small circle, and make it nice and green. So Alex has a question. She says, I've done UX design before. I'm wondering how heavily involved are you in the coding process alongside design? I think it really comes down to, it depends on the company you're working for. The last company I worked for, I did a little bit of coding on the side, but for the most part, we had engineers that kind of tackled the coding. So I would do the design and then just kind of pass it off to the engineers and they would figure it out. Some people like doing everything. Some people are full stack. I'm not. I try to focus just on design, but I try to also know a little bit of code just so that if, I can kind of understand their world a little bit. Imagine if everyone was named Bob. That would be interesting and kind of terrifying. So now for the messages view. So we're going to start off by creating, so we basically, in the messages view, we have two sides. We have the side from Bob and we have the side from us. So we're going to, on this side, we're going to line it up with the grid, drag out one circle. This will be Bob number 1, I guess. There we go. And then we need a chat bubble. So with my rectangle tool selected, drag out a chat bubble like this. I may want the corners a little bit round. So right here, I'm going to grab this handle, drag it out like this, just a little bit round. And one thing I might want to do is have one corner nice and sharp and the other corner is rounded. So if I go over to this section over here, does my zoom not work? Oh, there we go. So you can kind of see that we can add a different radius. So we can have 11 for all radius, or all corners, or we can have a different radius for each corner. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you exactly which side it's on. So this is top left, this is top right, bottom right, and then bottom left. And that bottom left is what we kind of want to tackle. We'll just grab that and change that to 0. I pressed 9, didn't I? 0. There we go. So now we have one corner, which is nice and sharp, and the rest are nice and rounded. And we can duplicate this down here, and we'll get to that in a second. We also want to duplicate this on this side. Let me bring up my grid. And this, I'm going to have my blue, because that's going to be a message from me. And I'm just going to flip it like that. It's going to be a smaller message. There we go. Bring this guy back up. And I may want this message a little bit bigger, so I'm going to drag this down, bring Bob's head down here. There we go. Let's add one more message from me. And you're noticing as I'm dragging these, it actually aligns it. So it tells you that this spacing here is the same as the other spacing up at the top, which is nice. This will be a bigger message. And then let's say Bob sent us a photo. So in this case, these rounded corners probably won't apply if it's a photo. So I'm going to actually turn off the rounded corners and make this a little bit bigger and stretch it out to the side. This will be our photo preview. Beautiful. All right, so now that that's done, I'm actually going to move all of these up a little bit, and I want to turn these into a group. So I'm going to Command or Control G, and I'm going to name this Messages. And I haven't been doing a good job at naming my layers. This is online. And the lines, I'm not too, I can group these into a hamburger menu. Beautiful. All right, so now at the bottom we need our place where you can tap to text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out a rectangle at the bottom. I'm not too worried about centering it right now. I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to round my corners all the way, turn off the border. Actually, you know what? I might want a border. I may want a border. But it's going to be a very light border, just a very subtle border, just like that. The fill might be a little bit too much. There we go. And I'll leave it right about there. Now inside, just to tell the users that this is something you can text in, I'm going to type the word, or I guess the letters A and A. I'm going to make it light and a little bit bigger. Beautiful. So now what we need is we need some more assets. We need a like, thumbs up, and we need a photo icon. So we're going to go down here. Here's a like icon. We can just grab and paste it. Whoops. I'm not a big fan of the line design, so I'd probably use a solid if I had more assets at my disposal, but you know, it's the way it is. And we need a photo icon. There we go. Just to be even though we have a solid photo icon or camera icon, I'm going to grab this one for now, just to be consistent, even though I don't like it. I keep missing it. There we go. Make this a little bit smaller. Line it up. Perfect. Okay. So, looking at what we have now, we have our message view, we have our messages, we have a photo placeholder, and we have our object at the bottom where we can tap to bring up a keyboard, which is what we're going to do now. So if we go back over to our UI kit, we actually have a keyboard. We can grab this keyboard down here at the bottom, copy it, head back over here, and if we create a new artboard, whoops, wrong artboard, there we go, and I can paste it, we now have a keyboard that we can use as an overlay. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just use this. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. Because one thing you have to keep in mind when you're creating a messenger style app is after the keyboard pops up, this section at the bottom also has to pop up. So I'm going to grab this from my previous artboard, copy it, and then hop over here and paste it. And just leave it right about there. Now what I will need to do, because this is going to be used as an overlay, I'm going to have to put a background on here. So it just has to be a white background, no border. Whoops. In my layers palette, just drag this to the back. Beautiful. All right, so now that that keyboard is ready to go, when I'm prototyping, and I'll get more into prototyping in a few minutes, I can hop into prototype, drag this over to my overlay, switch over to overlay. I'm gonna have it slide up. Let's ease it out. And then if I press play and then click on this, it pops up, which is really neat. Now, one thing that I did a little bit wrong is I selected the whole artboard. In fact, I want to select just this little guy at the bottom. Drag it over, make sure it's on overlay, slide up. I'm going to make it a little bit faster. And if I play it one more time, whoop, there we go. Cool. So now for prototyping, let's start doing some of this stuff. So the sign in button, let's say we'll go to conversations. We're going to slide this to the left. We're not going to make it an overlay. And we'll make a nice duration of 0.2 seconds. On this artboard, let's say this message here, or any of these ones, in fact, we'll go over to the message view. We can slide it to the left as well. Contacts, we'll go over to this artboard. Slide to the left. Conversations, we'll go to this artboard. See how easy prototyping is? And this one, I want to probably slide to the right. And if we play it, let's actually see how things are looking. Sign in, very good. Now, one thing I am noticing now that I'm playing it, and this is kind of a benefit of prototyping, is that this is all looking very small. I would probably increase the size of a lot of this stuff. Click on this, it goes there. One thing I don't have is a back button. So I definitely need a back button. And as you start prototyping things, you're gonna notice that you're missing stuff. So instead of a hamburger icon, I may want a back button. So let me go down to my icons down here. Whoops, I'm in prototype mode. Grab my back button. So maybe it makes sense for here and here, but it probably doesn't make sense for here. So I can grab my hamburger menu, just delete that, and then paste in a back button. Make that the same color. And make sure to line it up with my grid. There we go. I'm going to add this to my assets panel. Call it back button, or just back. Beautiful. So now back in prototype, I can grab this back button, and let's say it would go back to the unread messages, and it would slide to the right. So one more time, prototype, sign in, goes to our messages view. We can go to contacts, conversations. Here's our unread message, or read message. It goes to Bob's message, and then we can slide back over. Actually, no, we can click on the keyboard. That pops up. Click on it again, it pops down, and we can slide back to conversations, which is great. Now, again, I'm noticing that things are a little bit small, so let me fix some of that stuff. And that's the beauty of repeat grids. You can easily fix some of this stuff, and it all updates. Make these a little bit longer. Grab Bob's name. Move it down. Give me a little bit more room to work with. There we go. Okay. And you know what? One thing I completely forgot about is a new message icon. So let me tackle that quickly. And if I create a circle like that, make it our highlight blue with no border. Let's put that at the bottom right-hand corner of our application, just down here. And I want a nice little plus button. Use my text tool to type out plus. Make it nice and bold, a little bit bigger. And for this icon, I actually want it to remain fixed. So I'm going to group these back in my layers panel, name this new message. And over to the right, I'm going to turn on fixed position when scrolling. So that way, if we do have a scrollable artboard, which I can do by clicking on the artboard and just dragging it down, and you'll notice there's this handle over here. That tells me what's going to be visible. So anything above that is going to be visible, and anything below that is not. So if I extend this artboard, or this repeat grid downwards, add even more bobs, and then preview this and scroll it, whoops, you're noticing I didn't catch the plus button. Ah, the plus button is not in my group. There we go. Let's try that one more time. There we go. So now the plus button stays fixed and everything else is scrolling, which is great. So how's everyone doing? Hopefully you're picking up on some stuff, some tips and tricks. So far we've been able to create a simple login screen which links over to our messages containing unread messages or unread messages and read messages. We have our contact list. We have our actual message view containing a bunch of chat bubbles and a poppable keyboard using an overlay. One thing we didn't do is really activate the search icon, which we can probably do pretty quickly as a nice little overlay. What I can do is grab this guy and use this. It'll probably look about like that. Create a new artboard right above, like that. Drag this into that artboard. And it's so easy to reuse assets when you need them. And then if I go to prototype, grab this search icon, drag it over here, make sure it's an overlay, you'll see this little thing pop up. So I can actually tell it exactly, if I want it over here, I can put it there. If I want it here, that's where it'll be. And I can have it slide, let's say, to the left. So when I prototype, click on the search icon, little search bar slides out to the left, click on it again, it slides back in, which is great. Can we fix headers? Yes, you can. So let's say, let me show you this quickly. Let's assume I wanted this whole section to be fixed. What I would have to do is create a background right behind all this stuff. Let me drag this to the back, turn off the border, and then select all of this material, put it into a group. I'm going to press Command or Control G. Let's name this header. And then if I turn on fixed position when scrolling, oh, this artboard is not scrollable yet. Now it is. Scroll down. And when I preview this and I scroll, you're noticing that header remains completely fixed, which is nice. So you can definitely have fixed elements on the top, the bottom, floating around like this new message icon. So one more time, we have our prototype. We have a sign-in screen, which links to our messages, which again, is a little bit small, but that's easily fixable. We have our contacts, conversations. We have our message with Bob, from Bob, our keyboard, our back button, and our search button, which only works in contacts because I forgot to link it up on the other one. But that's very easily doable. Just like that. Overlay, slide to the left. And bam. There we go. So that will just about do it. And once you're finished with all this stuff, you can actually go ahead and you can publish your prototypes just like this. You can allow comments, create public link. And what's really cool is once that's published, you can go over to Behance. And if you're creating a project for this daily challenge, you're actually able to take your entire prototype and embed it. So we have our embed icon right here. The code has been copied. I can paste that and embed it. And in a second, our prototype should show up eventually. It'll show up, I promise. And it's scrollable, it's clickable. People will be able to interact with it directly on the page, which is fantastic. So that will just about do it for this stream, my first stream on Behance, hopefully first of many. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out for the last hour. I hope you picked up on some tips. Let me know how I can improve for the next time, if I went too fast, too slow. And this has been fun. Thank you, Anel, Saru, Aaron, Eric, Enrique, Raphael, Alex. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. This was fun. Hopefully I'll be back for more. And I'll see you all next time. Thank you, Alexander. I'll see you all later. Take care.